Go ahead and go.
We're talking. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Harambe's Heroes podcast, where you come for all your professional podcaster content. Today, we're very happy to talk about how Evan went and made all these people look stupid or the Orlando GT with Slaanesh because it's just too easy. If you're looking for secrets on why Slaanesh is good, there aren't any. We don't have any of those for you. We're just going to talk about how he's better at the game than everybody. So, with that introduction, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your weekend in Orlando, Mr. Miller?
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm there. There. I think everyone is expecting some kind of hidden knowledge or some secret, thing that I figured out, and that like it's gonna change the way we look at Slash. But no. I don't think so. I mean, I will say there is a lot of stigma, primarily behind glucose, and I will go into the list a little bit. But first, I'll talk about how the games went real quick, and then what actually like how I actually play the games. So yeah, so first match that I went up was the one that I lost, but it was also a very close game. I went up against Chris Bromley, who was playing Disciples of Zinch. Had that what I think is that list that everyone like a lot of people that I've seen the list matchups, they're playing that Zinch Archaon with the blue scribes and just a ton of pink horrors. His was slightly different. I don't know if we always see the Chaos Lord on foot as well as the
Oh, you're going to
I mean
consistently.
the Chaos Sorcerer Lord was there, of course, but the Chaos Lord on foot for the double fight, like that one I hadn't come across yet, so it was interesting to see that. And the game started out well into my favor. He went first, just moved up his stuff to capture the objectives, but I was able to, on my turn, get a deep strike in with Sigvald and my Keeper of Secrets. Got behind his line. He had a gap between, which, by the way, just in the future, Chris, don't leave any gaps. I mean, I understand coherency is kind of a difficulty with that, but with the new
It's
pylon,
hard though, right? Because I
yeah,
mean, Sigvald's like on a 40 or 50.
yeah, he's on
I believe.
50. Yeah, he's pretty, and he comes out anywhere within that 6-inch board edge, and with the +3 to charge, I rolled a 9, I believe, and so I got a 12-inch total charge,
Right.
and so
Almost like a Marauder charge where
yeah,
you get
well,
really far into a unit and then you have your pile in too.
yeah,
So it's kind of hard for
and
people to conceptualize a lot of the time.
one of
Yeah, and
the
you did that to me before you went.
yeah
You killed my Terraform on Manicore from
yeah
like 18 inches away on turn one.
one of the big
And I
things
did have a screw.
yeah one of the big things with it is like you screen. I think a lot of people are still screening in 2.0, where realistically I would not have been able to get to his stuff even with that 12-inch charge, because I was still been within that pile-in range, but because of the new pile-in rules, I was still able to swing a total of 15 inches and get into his. He had his blue scribes right there. Killed it
Right.
immediately. I mean that was without. I mean pretty simple. But then the
I
keep.
think a lot of people are making that mistake with
Mhm.
against against Lord Hazen, where they think they have to screen it, but you have to come off board edge.
Yeah.
So like
That,
you can just screen it by not being
Not giving up.
board edge.
yeah.
Also,
It always sounds scary, and I'll go into it later. But like it always looks scary whenever I describe it to people when we're setting it up. Like, oh yeah, I do this deep strike thing, and especially I kind of like the way that it's worded because you set up everything on the board, your entire army, and then before the actual turn order is dictated, then you roll the dice and then take them off the board, which I find really cool because it kind of gives people are setting up and matching, and that was something that he had done. He had matched where because I put Sigvald over there, he put Archaon over there, and then I just took Sigvald off. So it was kind of like Archaon was off to the side, which helped me out quite a bit. And yeah, so I got that charge off, got the pile in, so it was a full 15-inch movement into it, killed his blue scribes, and then the keeper secrets got into a flank of the pinks, stopped them from piling in, but also got to have Sigvald fight twice. So he piled in, killed the change caster general, and the change caster died. So he was already down a general and a hero. And then because Archaon was off to the side, he had nothing within range to battle shock the battle shock immune his stuff. And so he did get he used his ones because there were a couple pinks left in each unit. But then I won the double turn, and all at the end of the double turn, he didn't have any horrors left. Like they were all gone. Glutos killed like 25, and then the rest battle shocked off because they were outside of the range. And then the other two just got killed between Sigvald, the Keeper Secrets, and the Painbringer. So he only had Archaon, and I was 9 points up. So it looked like it was already going to be over. But then he double turned me back, and he kept doing the double fight. He got the spell off with the re-rolling, and he got the 9-inch charge agenda. So I was trying to set it up in a way where I could, save myself. I was hoping Glutos with the -1 to hit could really just kind of hold him down, but he got Slayer Kings from full health. Then throughout the game, Sigvald got Slayer Kings, Keeper Secrets got Slayer Kings, and then my Keeper Secrets that I summoned just had to make a 6-inch charge for me to win. Failed at re-rolling, and then she got Slayer Kings. So I was like, yeah, this was but yeah. So my first game I had lost, but the way that Games Workshop pointed these things out each match, and you'll see the points is like super off every time from game to game. It was just whatever points you scored in that game was the points you got in going towards your total score. And so if you look at the scores, I actually scored what we had. So Chris scored 37 and I scored 28 with a loss. But I
kind of like that.
I scored higher than any, like there was I think probably 20 people who won that I scored higher than. Which was like super weird, right? Like it was like I
kind of like that because a loss isn't just like win or lose.
Right.
Like,
well,
if you truck somebody hard, they get knocked down to the bottom of the barrel, and then if you play a tight game like that in game one, because that game one is always so random, you might get paired up. Like my first game at ACL was against another guy that went 5-0. Like I mean, you never know how that first game's going to play, and if you play a very close one like he and I did, like you and that guy did. You're not out of the tournament by losing.
Right, exactly. Like I even though I had lost, I felt like it was one of those games that like he was down from the get go. At 37, I mean, I saw people that were scoring 50 points or something like that if they were tabling. So he had to catch up, and I was already like I was still in the game. I could have won my other 4 games, and still, and as we saw, I was the top 4-1, and I came in 4th place because of it. So it did help. And then, but the reason why I say it was kind of weird scoring is, so going into game 2, the max points you could win was 1 overall, because it was the oh gosh, what objective is it? It was I can't remember the name of it, but it was the one where you had to grab all the objectives and you immediately won if you did.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it was one of those games, but because there was no scoring, you only scored battle tactics. They rated that one as though you only scored 1 point. You either got a major victory or a major loss, which was 0. So it's like, okay, but even if I had lost that game, it was only 1 point difference. So it was super strange. I mean, I couldn't, the way they rated all the scoring, I couldn't have beaten somebody who went 4-1 with me going 3-2. Even if they, only won the 4th game because of that. So it was super strange stuff. But going into game 2, I was actually really nervous because I was going up against an OBR player, and this is like a grind fest kind of game. He had nothing but the Mortek Guard, 5 of the Cav, and then Arkan, which in the crawler. But like the new meta with them is you're running Petrifex Elite. You reduce rend by 1, which all my stuff is either -2 rend or -1 rend. So pretty much negates it. They got the reroll saves, and they also have the Petrifex abilities too, where they increase their rend as well as just stopping all the stuff. So it's like a brick wall that you're running into. And I don't have a lot of mortal wounds that I can do. So going into that one, I was super nervous. But luckily, the one thing that saved me and helped me win the game was that the Keeper Secrets got into the big 30 block of Mortek Guard, and every single turn got the no pylon, the Locust. And so those 30 Mortek were just sitting there every single turn. He only got 3 Mortek that could swing every single turn. And so the Keeper Secrets was just swinging into him every single battle phase or combat phase, but then he's just sitting there like not taking it. So then Glutos just ran up the middle of the board, killed his fought twice, killed his general, which was the whatever the cavalry hero is. I can't. Cavalos. Yeah, Leech Cavalos. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Killed that, and then he tried to bail with Arkan. He tried to grab my back objective, and he left those 30 Mortek by themselves. And that was kind of a mistake because they didn't have any buffs or anything outside of what they could do to themselves, which was just the reroll saves. So Glutos, Sigvald, and the Keeper Secrets just kept beating it until there was like 5 left, and then I chose them as the battle line to kill. And the one thing that made it so that I could win outside of grabbing the objectives was he kept picking things to kill, and he wouldn't be able to capitalize on it. So I think one of them was to kill my general, and then he failed to charge into it, and he couldn't get into it. So that's
one thing that I've learned, like for those battle tactics.
You can't be risky.
That you're gonna get. Like don't play around with it. Don't I tend to get a little cocky and say I'm going to go kill that thing, and then I don't get the battle tactic. And then because at that point, a lot of times you're just out of the game.
Yeah, and that was a problem too, where like all of his stuff was similar to mine, where almost all of it was melee based. And so I knew for a fact that like when he's like, because you have to pick that battle tactic right away. He's like, you know what, I'm going to try to kill that general. I'm like, okay, I go ahead and use my finest hour. And so it's already +1 save. And then I'm going to use Lurid Haze or All Out Defense. And it's like, that's really tough to truth. And then if he got close, I just used Redeploy. And OBR right now, they're kind of in a tough spot where they can't use the command abilities. So like one time he was like, I'm gonna try to take your objective, and use Conquer. He was outside of the 6 inches, but only had to make like a 4-inch charge to steal it. He failed it, but he couldn't re-roll it because it was OBR, and he ended up losing Conquest because of it. Or Conquer.
That's why in my OBR list that I built, that I'm going to be playing at some point this season, I took the Triumph and stayed at 1950 so I could get the Triumph for the one-time reroll on the charge. It's so important for guys that have access to it in the other way.
I will say that I think a lot of people underestimate Triumphs because my list was priced at 1955, and so I was undercaught. I got my Triumph every single turn or every single game. And I just chose the +1 to wound, and I mean that thing was like amazing how effective it was, especially on Sigvald, because then you're 2s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 rend, D3 damage. So he
important bit for sure. It denies your opponent the triumph. Also,
yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people, they were pricing themselves between 1960 and 1980, really hoping they could get it, and I would deny it to them every single time. So. But I ended up, because it was just a grind fest, I got over 34 summoning points, or depravity points. And I was able to summon 2 keepers in that time. And they just moved them up, because none of them were prime objectives. So I was able to pull one of his. I made him go second on turn 3, pulled one of his objectives. Then I'd already summoned a keeper that previous turn, and I summoned another keeper, ran them up on the objective, and I won immediately. So that was how I was able to pull off the victory on that. There was no way I could have done it otherwise outside of like it would have been a tie, and then I would have won a minor victory, just because I had more battle tactics completed. So, and then going into game 3, I fought a Cities of Sigmar player. I don't recall what city he was fighting or what city he was playing.
It was Phoenicia.
Oh, I think so, but it was so off, or it was so weird. Not to make fun of the list or anything, but it was a good list from what I saw. But it had one Phoenician unit. Everything else was the Griffin. It was the Griffin, and then the whatever the cavalry, the monstrous cavalry.
Demigriff.
Thank you, Demigriff riders.
Might have been Hammerhall.
It
Also,
maybe I'm not quite sure. I don't think it.
Fight at the end of the combat phase again.
No.
Did he fight twice? No.
No, I don't think he ever got to do anything. That was the problem. Because anytime he fought, it just died. So, because he had Gotrek, 12 Demigriff Knights, and 2 6-blocks, and then
these dirty Gotrek players.
yeah. Well, I felt real. I bullied that Gotrek. I'm sorry. That was really bad. That game. So, and then he had the Frostheart Phoenix, anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, and then he also had the Empire, or I'm sorry, the Free Guild General on Griffin with the Amulet of Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was telling him, every game I made sure to tell my opponent, like, as I put the models down, like, what each one did, and then what Lurid Haze did, because I wanted to make sure that I'm not playing games with people. I don't like the gotcha moments. Mm-hmm. So, once I made sure everything was okay, I went ahead and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go first since, I'm less drops, and you put your I saw that he put it as anointed on Frostheart in the corner. But not outside. I still could deploy right outside that 9 inches. So that's exactly what I did. Rolled like an 11 on the charge. So I got into it, one-shot the anointed, and then the keeper, I deep struck the keeper as well. Keeper got into combat with the Demigriff Knights, did her thing, but then made Sigvald pile in and fight them, and so there was like 1 Demigriff Knight left. And the keeper was now out of combat because he had strung him out. Well, then it was his turn. And I captured all the objectives too. And then it was like the shifting objective, whatever that new shifting objective map is. And so that's it. Thank you. I grabbed all the objectives. Then he went. I mean, you can't really ignore Sigvald and the keeper, right? I mean, that's a lot of points. And so he's like, you know what? I'm gonna kill the keeper secrets. I'm gonna try to bring it down. So, I mean, right away I knew that he was going to try to kill the keeper. He tried to put the spell on Gotrek to make the +2 movement, +2 charge. I unbound it. And then he tried to move Gotrek up, and I saw he just got within that 9 inches. I redeployed, got a 5, and now he's out. And she's out, and she's completely safe. And so that, every single turn, that was what was happening. Is every time Gotrek got into range of something, I just got him out of it, and I can only imagine how frustrating that is. I guess that's the downside to bringing Gotrek in many of those cases. He did kill Sigvald, but Sigvald had killed, I don't know, like 500 points worth of stuff, so I was perfectly fine with losing him. And then he charged. I don't quite understand, but he charged Demigriff Knights into my Painbringers, thinking he could kill them, which he couldn't. I ended up doing enough and taking him out. But then his Free Guild General on Griffin tried to charge into Glutos, which I thought was a little strange. Maybe he thought it was like super tanky and couldn't do it, but he rolled pretty bad on the saves, and I ended up doing like 15 damage in one swing, and he made a few 5-ups, but then we got to the next combat phase and it just died immediately. So at that point he was like, let's just go ahead and call it. And a great player. I think it was just like a really tough battle plan, because I just kept dancing around him the entire time, and then wherever he went for the center, and then it would change from the center objective to the far objective, and it was just luck was not on his side for that. So I ended up going 2-1 day 1, And then my goal at that point was just to go 3-2. I mean, that was really what I expected going into Orlando. So then the next day, I went against a Stormcast player who had a really scary list. I mean, I haven't played Stormcast a whole lot, but this one was kind of tricky because it was the Star Drake with a Amulet of Destiny, and he also had Staunch Defenders on it, and whatever the foot guy is with the lantern. So he's making it like a 1-up save with like all this stuff, and I was like, yeah, there's no way I can, even Sigvald can't chew through that. But he also had Yndrasta with 5 Praetors as the Guardians, and luckily we ruled it. We actually had to contact the TOs had a direct line of contact with the rules writers because Sigvald ignores ward saves, and we were wondering how it works with Praetors because they on a 2 through 4 take the wound, and then a 5 through 6 they ignore the wound. So I was like, well, you can't, or negate the wound, I should say. So we were trying to gauge it, and so they were like, no, they just take the wound on a 2-up. So we got that off well, and it got scary because Sigvald failed his 9-inch rerolling charge, which was pathetic. But then the Keeper Secrets and Glutos just ran up the board because he went first, smashed into my stuff, but didn't kill anything with his Annihilators. And I warned him about it before, but he generated like 8 depravity for me turn 1. Killed his stuff, moved up the board because I wanted to capture as many objectives as I could. Got into combat with Yndrasta, and I was kind of banking on the roll-off. That was really what I needed to get. Ended up doing a little bit of damage to Yndrasta, and then I won the roll-off. Sigvald got in, and then I still had to deal with the Star Drake. Well, the Keeper Secrets had Slothful Stupor to make it so he couldn't use command abilities, and can't run and can't charge. Right. And then Glutos put his spell on the Star Drake as well, half movement, half run, half charge. So that thing was just done for the entire rest of the game. So at that point, like, even though we went another couple turns, like, the game was over from there because I killed Yndrasta. And then finally going to game 5, I went against a Big Wall player, and he definitely knew what he was doing. And it was the one where it was the whatever the Battle for the Pass is, like the new one. I can't remember.
Sounds like he knew what he was doing.
Well, like he
knew what he was doing.
As far as
the nearest wall.
Yeah, as far as secrets go, like whenever I played all 5 players that I played, the first 4 said they hadn't fought Slaanesh. The 5th one said he fought Slaanesh, but it was before the book update, so back when they were good. And so there was kind of that element where like I had fought all these armies, so I already knew what their armies did. So this guy, he at least knew to block off all his stuff. I couldn't do the typical deep strike stuff. And because he was less drops than me, he was the only one I fought who was less drops than me. It was a 2-drop list. He made me go first. So there was really no effective way for me to put Sigvald and the Keeper. So I just put them back where they started, and then just created a line of Painbringers knowing what was about to happen. But kept Glutos right behind the Painbringers that were closest to his Maw Crusher that he had. And sure enough, he's like, oh, I'm going to try to do this, and I'm going to Finest Hour my Maw Crusher. And so I responded with Glutos Finest Houring. And then he moved across the board, smashing all my stuff. But then I used all the save bonuses on Glutos. So Glutos was a +3 and -1 to hit. His Maw Crusher only had -3 rend on 1 attack, and I was like, I'm still saving on a 3-up. So he's like, oh, I guess I'll just kill these Painbringers then. So he killed the 5 Painbringers, but then Glutos fought twice because the Keeper was wholly within that 12 inches, and did all but 1 wound to the Maw Crusher. And then on my turn, because I won the roll-off, I just used I was like, I'm going to do Bring It Down, did Arcane Bolt, killed it, and then moved up, like ran up the board and killed all his other stuff. So it was, I think we got it to turn 3, and he's like, I'm going to go ahead and call it. So that's how I ended up winning 4-1. Like the entire time I was just completely dumbfounded that I did so well.
Not only did you go 4-1, like you broke.
Not only did I.
3, I quit.
There were 8 or 9 people, I believe, that went 4-1. But because of me making sure that, there were 2 games where people wanted to quit early, and I'm like, well, we're gonna talk it out and make sure we both maximize the points that we could get, because
Well,
every point mattered in the total score, and that's why I ended up placing fourth instead of what was it,
with
10th, because
the
10th
replay
place
stuff,
was, or I'm sorry,
like
11th place was a 4-1 too.
as much as we thought, like you couldn't just end a game by turn 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like all it takes is a couple of failed battle tactics in round
Oh,
1 and 2, and you
absolutely.
put a game away.
Yeah, like I would say the objectives matter only enough to like just score that extra point or two, but the battle tactics are always usually 2 or 3 points. And especially if you're fighting an opponent who has monsters that can get that extra point per round, it's you need them every time, because if you fail just one, you are behind for the entire game. And so that was something that like I felt like with all the practice I had done, and that was a big thing too. Is here in Texas, we do. I mean, I play 4 to 5 games a month easy, and so that really helped, because a lot of the people I talked to, especially in Orlando and Florida, there's no AOS scene. Every single person I talked to was like, oh yeah, we only get to play games when we go to these GTs and stuff. And so that was a huge.
Come to the monthly tournaments in Houston, you're going to get 6 games
Yeah,
in a month.
exactly. So that was something that I think was a huge part into how I got 4-1, was that I had played every army, or I owned every army that I fought against, and I had just had a lot of practice fighting into it, where scoring the battle tactics was more important than just grabbing the objectives. I would say it was the most important.
I think that's something else that gets undervalued too, because like board time is very important, but also you need to have knowledge of how all the other armies work. Like board time is only going to get you to a certain point, and like if you can play games against every single type of army, then you can cover those bases. But realistically, you're not going to. You're going to have like a rotation of a few armies that you're playing against, and you learn how to play the structure of the game better. But you need to have the knowledge of other people's armies and tied together with that board time.
And I will say that is something that you especially have taught me, that as far as like becoming a better player overall, and I think this goes for anyone. I mean, I feel confident that you or any of us that are in this group can go 3-2 with almost any list, no matter how bad they are on the tier, just because we know more about our opponent's army, either as much as they do or more than they do. And I feel like that's a huge aspect to it, is like if I know my opponent's army in and out, it's much easier for me to predict what they're going to be able to do, because that you can't remember if you're fighting an army. And I feel like that was a huge thing. I tell everything that my army does, but there's no way that they're going to remember all 50 things that my guys do, and that happened every single time. Especially,
if they're not already familiar.
I mean, you look at Glutos' War Scroll, and it's like 3 pages long by itself. Nobody's going to remember what Glutos does, and that's his War Scroll spell. Oh, he's -1 to hit always, even in shooting. Like, everything about it was super difficult, I think, for my opponents. You could tell that that a few of them, even the Archaon list, that list is really strong. Other than I feel like it should be Host Arcanum. But other than that, like I mean, it's a really strong list, and yet it struggled against what I had, because I felt like there wasn't much that they were more thinking about what they should do than what my opponent's going to do. So.
Well, you remember you and I played 2 games right before you left.
Exactly.
It was like 1-1. Like I was doubting my shit after that game. I was like, Evan just took me to the woodshed game 1 with Slaanesh.
Slaanesh. Well, and that was something.
I was like, maybe my list isn't what I thought it was. And then the second game, I think I played it a little differently, a little more aggressively. I think I was too timid or whatever. I don't know, but it's a good list.
I think the thing with 3.0 is that there are no. I mean, there's bad lists, absolutely, but there's no bad armies. As far as
bad decision making.
Like even if you are losing every game, you can do it where you're scraping by enough where you can end up placing extremely high just on points because you're like, hey, I'm really good at getting the battle tactics. I'm really good at making sure, hey, I don't need all 4 objectives. I only need one more than my opponent to score the entire 5 or 6 points per round. And that really matters.
I think that's the decision-making part of it. Like, I noticed, like, every game I've lost, like that game against you, I was picking battle tactics to go kill things because, I mean, I like killing shit. I mean, so I picked battle tactics on kill things against, like, that first game we played, and it was like, I was never getting them. And by the time we got to turn 3, all you had to do was get a battle tactic to push the game out of reach. You know, it was like...
Well, and that was a huge thing that I kept coming across is, like, a lot of people, they were thinking, like, I felt like that was a big thing with the Big WoW player, is he's like, I'm going to smash in with all my stuff. I mean, everything he had, smash into my entire army turn 1. And I was fine with that. I lost every Painbringer except for, like, 1 unit. And the thing was, after his Maw Crusher died and everything, he had no battle tactics he could get. What's he going to do? He can't kill my heroes because they're all too tanky. So he can't kill my battle line because they're all dead. You can't, and that was something that a lot of people, you had to be very careful because if you kill their general turn 1 and you didn't pick that as the battle tactic, well, you just screwed yourself out of a battle tactic for that turn.
Yeah, what's very important against like Giants specifically, for example, because all of their units share so many keywords that you need to pick, like Slay the Warlord, Bring It Down, and Broken Ranks in the proper order. So you're not denying yourself the opportunity to score those points. And also, when you're killing things in the game, it's very risky to to pick your objective is killing something because there's so many defensive abilities in this game now, where whether it be redeploy or makes it significantly harder for you to get engaged with those units. And then there's also lots of just generic defensive buffs that you can use to deny people those battle tactics. So really, like, to kill things in this game now, there is a resource buffer that you have to pull away from your opponent to make their units.
You almost have to overcommit too in some cases.
Like. No. It's like, I was going to say it too. It's like you almost have to bait out. Like, if there's a big hero you want to kill, you almost have to bait out that finest hour early before you commit to killing it. Like, you have to bait those things out and then go after them later. Like, bait it out before you make that your battle tactic. Like, go in and throw something at it.
Yeah, that was a huge issue that I saw. Like that, going back to that one guy with Gotrek. I mean, that Gotrek should have been able to clean up my entire army, no problems. I mean, there wasn't anything that I really had that could take him on. But he chose to go. He's like, I'm gonna go kill that thing, the Keeper Secrets, to bring it down, and then I just redeployed out of it. He loses not just 2 points. I mean, it's a lot more than 2 points he just lost. Because now Gotrek is still outside the range of anything for a whole nother battle round. Because I'm not going near it. And he's outside of that 15-inch range. So even with that movement, he's most likely not going to make it into anything. So that 420-point hero or whatever is completely useless until turn 4. So
he's a little overrated now.
Yeah.
4-inch movement, like, he really does. He's dependent on your opponent putting something into him to make him effective.
Yeah, I mean,
he has to run at you. Like, just stay away from him.
I would say there's some objectives where you can just kind of run him into if there's only like in that case, if there's only like 3 objectives, you just put him on the center objective and then you can focus on the other one, and it's not like they're gonna have to charge Gotrek or something if they really want to. Unless they get lucky and it just keeps going on to the one that they have. So I think there is play with it, but he's not I'm gonna hunt down Archaon. I'm gonna hunt down whatever.
It can be. Well, the only place where he becomes that is an Iron Rack Deepkin.
Right.
Where he gets the turn 2 run and charge.
But even then, it's still not. I mean, so your max movement is 10.
Yeah, but on turn 2, you've already ran him once. You've probably already got him 10 inches up the board, and everyone's so fucking afraid of him they won't go near him. Yeah. So that gives you a turn 2. He's gone 20 inches. He can probably get into something.
I think
and start chopping it.
The problem is that I feel like with that specific list, you're sacrificing a lot to just have a Gotrek run in charge. You're giving up a quarter of your
You can
army.
still get like 15 eels in there if that's the way you wanted to do it.
True. I mean, you get it's just that I think that it's like not
I agree.
top table stuff.
With Deepkin the powers and then the Marty and your Leviathans now. I think that any Deepkin list is going to have
a lot of attacks with them.
Like measurable success is going to be Fliptide with Volturnos and at least 2 turtles. I think that's the new Deepkin build if it ever takes off. Like that army's so obscure that it might not ever get played again because Eel's in there.
I feel I think most people who have the army are like, I'm not going to want to spend any more money on just to have it still come down overall. But I mean, so anyways, as far as my experience with it, I felt like the 4-1, it was a little off for me because most of the this tournament especially had a lot of newer players, or at least not competitive players. They don't really have tournaments or these major GTs in Florida, anyways.
Texas players,
right? Well, and there was only 2 Texas players in the entire tournament, so one was from Dallas and one was from here. So it was one of those things where I think that it should have been 3-2. I really think that 3-2 is where if I had played it. And, if I bring it to New Orleans or if I bring it to Austin, especially, 3-2 is kind of where I can expect it to be at, because it does have its gimmicks and it's a really strong defensive list, and I'll get into it in a second what it means to how I exactly play that. But I think that if a player who and Brian, I mean, is a perfect example. It fools the person the first time. On how if they ever fought that type of list, it has just enough little tricks and stuff that it fools most people the first time, and then the second time they know what to expect, and it's a lot easier for them to make sure that doesn't happen to them again. And usually once they figure out the gimmick, it's easy to counter. So I feel because Sigvald, so going into exactly what I'm trying to do with that list, the Painbringers are literally just a soak damage. I really don't use them for anything. They're pretty decent. They're way overcosted. I mean, it's incredible how stupid their prices are for. I mean,
it's the biggest weakness of the list is how terrible the battle line is.
Yeah,
right. Just across the board, Slaanesh battle line is probably the worst thing.
I mean, I think 135 is the cheapest, but it's the cavalry, so I don't even consider them battle line. So you got 10 demonettes for 140. And then these guys are 160, but you also have to pay the hero tax to make them battle line. So, it's one of those things where, realistically, a lot of people were like, how is he winning with Painbringers? It wasn't really the Painbringers. The Painbringers were pretty good. I mean, they're pretty tanky. Their War Scrolls I love. I actually love everything about it, except for the points. Realistically, they should be the same points as Chaos Warriors. I really don't understand why they feel like they should be so much more expensive, other than they have a little more damage that they can do, because they got the exploding 6s, and then they do 6s to wound or mortal wounds in addition, with -1 rend. So it's there is a little bit about it, but I don't know. I feel like it's not really that big of a deal even if they made them 20 or 30 points more than Chaos Warriors. They're really not getting a whole lot out of their kit. They're really just meant to be damage soakers. My list was only 83 wounds, I believe, so it's pretty low as far as what the kit has.
But I've experienced it. It's hard to move it.
Yeah,
if you don't
and that's the thing. So if you're hey, how do I beat this list? If you look at it and you're well, this is a pretty tanky list. Everything is a 3-up save, essentially. The way that you beat this list is by denying depravity, which is quite easy.
Out of down a unit at a time.
Out of the 4 Chaos Gods armies, Khorne, it's kind of hard to ignore. Just you want to get rid of units, and so the Blood Tithe points just kind of generate naturally. Nurgle, you just can't even interact with. But then
Khornes don't snowball anything.
Right. Well, it's cumulative. There's only so many Blood Tithe you can get. Right.
But once you use them, they're all gone.
Yeah.
I think it sounded like all of your opponents just basically negated your weakness for you, and
Yes,
how
they compensated.
glucose is super slow, right? And they
Mhm.
just slam shit into glucose. That's the weakness of the list.
Right. Well, and that was one thing that I felt like if you're like, hey, how do I beat that list? You kill a unit and then move on. That's all you had to do. Don't like that was the big thing with especially the big WoW player. There was 3 games where I got over 30 depravity points, and it was just because they slammed everything at once, thinking they could win. And in most cases, they were winning, but I held on for 3 or 4 battle rounds, just because they were able to. No, I'm sorry, 3 or 4 combat rounds, just because I was able to, tank the hits. They would kill one each single time. I get depravity for every single one of those, and they're wounded too. So I'm getting like an average of 8 to 10 depravity per turn, and that was something that like. Like here, everyone knows how to counter it. I mean, that was something that like when I fight Ryan, he's like, okay, I'm gonna kill one, move on to the next, and so like I'm getting like 4 depravity per game because I can't do anything. So that's what the Painbringers are for. And then Sigvald is the one that everyone is scared of. I mean, every single time they're like, I'm focusing on Sigvald. I have most people tell me they're like, I've never seen a Glutos on the board before because everyone says he's trash. I don't get it. I don't understand why people think that is. First of all, Sigvald, if you're planning on playing him, do not play him in anything else other than Lurid Haze. Just don't. I mean, he's basically Gotrek but weaker. And
I don't think you play anything in that book but Lurid Haze, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there could be some, like I think Godseeker I've seen like a whole chariot build that went 4-1. I think that there is some, but yeah, I think Lurid Haze is by far like the only one that if you're like I'm trying to do competitive, like that's the one that you focus on. And if you're running Sigvald, like you just have to play Lurid Haze. I don't care what you're running outside of that. Lurid Haze is the only one you bring Sigvald in. That deep striking is so worth it for him. He has already got +3 charge, so he like 85% of the time makes that charge. But
Keeper with the amulet's a really nice piece.
yes,
too.
Yeah, I felt like I originally had 10 Slick Blade Seekers, for the wounds, and they do mortals, they have exploding hits. But then when I would practice with them, everything was just like, oh, I'm a 2-up save. And it's just like, dude, you can't do enough damage to kill anything with that. And the Keeper Secrets doesn't really have a huge number of attacks either. I feel like she's usually pretty floppy. But here's the way that so the big 3 are Sigvald, the Keeper Secrets, and Glutos. The Keeper Secrets I actually use as a support piece. She does not move up the board with she follows either Sigvald or follows Glutos. And that was my play. Everyone just thought the Keeper would run up the board and kill something, and like just be like a mini Maw Crush or whatever. And that is the wrong play. And that was how I saw the other Slaanesh players do it. Is they would just run up the board with it and just smash into it. No, she is only there to Locus, do her what is it called? The Temptation. Spells, and then use the CP. The CP is almost like if there's anything even close to worth her points on that War Scroll, it's the CP. Because that fight twice.
That spell is pretty good too. It's situational, but
Slothful Stupor.
I mean,
it's a 12-inch range, and so it's really tough to get that off. And there's other spells too. Like I could have taken the heal one, and the heal would have been really nice too, because it stacks with her healing that she has when she kills an enemy model or enemy hero. I think that's what most people bring.
She's a really good depravity magnet for that.
Right.
Where, like the amulet slows down the damage she takes enough to where she'll just stay alive and heal.
Yep. Yeah. And that did happen. There was one game with that Stormcast player. She got down to 1 wound left 4 times, but then she would just heal 6 wounds because she would kill something, and then I would do, with the heroic actions, you're just she's 10 bravery plus 1 from Glutos, so she's healing D3, and she just kept healing. So I never put her in an active combat situation if I could help it, unless she was trying to get the Locus off, which the Locus I feel like is greatly underestimated. I mean, there were several. That OBR player would have beat me had I not gotten that off. And then the Stormcast player probably would have at least put up a really close fight had I not gotten that off several times too. So
Stack's really good with Hero Hammer too,
yes,
because you stop the pylon and you just have
yep,
one little small point of interaction between your hero and the unit, so
yep.
it prevents a lot of that damage.
So
It really all it does, it makes the smaller units as you've locust produce just enough damage to generate depravity on that keeper. That's what happens in the interaction a lot of the time, because there's like two models fighting the keeper. They do 2 wounds. Like, cool, I heal the 2 wounds and I generate depravity. That's exactly what I want.
yeah,
Right?
and that was something that and the thing is they did FAQ it, so if you heal wounds, even if you took damage in that turn, you still get the depravity. So that was something that like helped me out quite a bit, where it just so that was what the keeper's job was. She would either deep strike with Sigvald and provide the extra fight because she wasn't reliably getting it. I got lucky, but she wasn't reliably getting that charge off. So she was more just to be within that, wholly within that 12 inches for Sigvald, so Sigvald could fight twice. So going into Sigvald is the scalpel. I think, Gavin, you were the one that was talking about that with Ryan, where it's like if you were to describe what the Deepkin Morsar eels are, they're not just like, oh, I'm gonna run into some kind of maw crusher or something. It's more they're meant to be a scalpel. You pick a target that you can kill, that's worth their points, and then you just deep strike them in there because it's the exact same deep strike rules, other than they have to come down the first time for Sigvald, or the first turn for Sigvald. And then once that happens, like Sigvald would get in there and he would kill whatever target that I put him on. Even if they weren't necessarily worth the 265 points that he's worth, the Keeper Secrets would do the double fight and kill something else. And it's like, hey, he did at least 265 damage. It may not like seem worth it, but he's going to distract them for at least another turn because he's sitting in their side, and he generates depravity if he's in the enemy territory because he's a general in Lurid Haze. So that was something too. And then if he dies, I get a CP for it. But most of the time, even if it's just a trade of points, I'm killing something way more important to them than Sigvald is to me. Sigvald just goes in, kills whatever needs to. Usually, and the reason why I even thought of bringing him, because I didn't really think he was worth it at all in 2.0. But in 3.0, everything has Amulet Destiny. Everything has a ward save. And so, like, those Phoenicium lists, I mean, that Anointed, I don't think I have anything that could have killed that Anointed on Frostheart because it's a 4-up ward save, and he can make it a 3-up base save. So I was like, man, there's nothing I can do that kills that except for Sigvald, and Sigvald gets in there and ignores negates. So he did 15 damage and with -2 rend and instantly killed it. So it's just one of those things that's like amazing what he can do. Even though that Anointed is probably only worth like 300 points.
That's his points.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It's a great trade, and he has to use resources to then target Sigvald, because Sigvald's a 3-up save with a 4-up ward save, so he's very difficult to get off the board too. So that's what Sigvald's only role is. He does nothing else other than generate depravity, kill something, and then die. Glutos, on the other hand, I feel like is probably the most underrated unit in the entire army. I mean, if people were to say like, if there was one unit that like was the best out of all Slaanesh, it's Glutos. I don't even care that he got a 75-point increase. He's still, I think, like he could go up to 500 or 550. I'd still play him every single time. Because he's just so worth it. I don't want him to go up. Like, please, GW, if you're listening, don't increase him anymore. But regardless, like, like he is like he's just amazing. A lot of people look at his points and go, "Ooh, that's really tough for him to get through," because he's basically just a Faticros, right? And
the 3-up base saves very important.
3-up base save with a -1 to hit aura. That is and all attacks made within 12 inches are -1 to hit, and that is just super good.
He has a Feel No Pain too.
He has he has a situational Feel No Pain. 2+. He has probably a very. I'm still learning how to use it, but his command ability is actually really good. The excessive gorging, I believe, or whatever it's called. where he heals whatever. You just pick something with like 1 wound left, and you just put all your attacks in there, and he'll heal like that many attacks. Or that many wounds. It's insane. And so like if you're trying to do a Slaanesh army, like I wouldn't even consider it without Glutos. Like if you're like, oh, I want to be competitive, like you just gotta get Glutos.
I think that's your core is the Keeper, Glutos, and Sigvald. I think that's your core no matter what you.
Yeah, if you're doing anything like that, that's because a lot of people are like, how is this working? Or how did they make this list work? Well, they're looking at Glutos like he's meant to be a Catacross, right? Catacross is a support piece, moves 4 inches up the board, and just provides his aura. Glutos, I actually treat exactly like Brian treats Archaon, where you just buff him up, charge him in, and then just watch as nothing happens. Like nobody kills him, right? Like I've never lost him in combat. Outside of Slayer Kings. I mean, it's just never happened. And it's one of those things where like you get so he's got the 5-up word save, and he's got spell casting, so he puts Mystic Shield on himself. He's got both Lurid Haze or All Out Defense he can do, and the -1 to hit aura. Well, that sounds a lot like Tzeentch Archaon, right? He's got the -1 to hit, 3-up save, blah blah blah. So it's one of those things where he even before, like if you took Slayer Kings out, Archaon and him probably just slap each other for 5 rounds.
No,
if Archaon probably might even die, because I've seen it before where I can get into Catacross or something like that, and he never dies. He only took like 4 wounds from fighting Catacross and a bunch of other things. So I think Glutos is like he has a run and charge, he has re-rolling charges. Everything about him is like built, and he gets stronger as the turns go on. So it's just he's really good with what he has. He has mortal wound output, and his damage is pretty decent too. But the big thing that makes him like go over the edge, and I think make him really good, is that Keeper Secrets. That Keeper Secrets, having him fight twice, like I said, he took out a Maw Crusher turn 1. He buffed up his Maw Crusher with the both all out attack and the finest hour, and Glutos still took it down to 1 wound left in the first turn, and then he just arcane bolted him this turn 2, so for the kill. Like that's insane how good he is. And I mean, if he was in any other army, I still think he'd be worth bringing. I think the reason why they gave him a point increase is because at 400 points, you could have just allied him into like a Tzeentch army or something, and he'd be amazing. I started seeing people doing that at the end of 2.0. People were allying him into Tzeentch, and he was doing pretty decently because the only thing he was missing out on was the shitty Slaanesh spells and exploding 6s. That was it. That was the only thing that he was missing out on. So his War Scroll is amazing, and so basically you just treat him like a mini Archaon. Just have him run around the board, do whatever he wants. And the only other thing is that the monster keyword. Well, that's actually good in most cases because a lot of things now are getting, like when I was fighting the Andrasta player, I was like, well, shit, I don't want to be like -10 to my wounds, which Archaon would be. So I killed Andrasta, and then I used the spell that made him a monster. And then he has all the monster stuff, and I can use him for the battle tactics too. And that's why like a lot of people are like, dude, you're only running 1 monster, and that monster's not very tanky. Well, it's like, well, Glutos is my monster if I need him to be. He's got that innate +1 to cast. He's usually getting it off unless I'm fighting like a Tzeentch army or a Lumineth army. So
Keeper will surprise you with how tanky it'll be.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
14 wounds with a 5-up. You're looking at almost 20 wounds to do, right?
And that Keeper Secret's hanging around Glutos is still getting that -1 to hit aura as well. So
and the time that they commit real heavy to it, that's when you're going to pop your finest hour. And
that's the thing. Like anytime you would know automatically that they're going after her because they would pick a battle tactic like, oh, kill that monster. Because I only have 1 monster, and I'd just be like, all right, I'm gonna, go out. And the thing is too, like as far as going back to like why Lurid Haze is better, Lurid Haze has the command ability where you can, at the start of the combat phase, pick something and it gets a +1 save. It's basically another all-out defense. And so most of the time, after that first initial smash where people would attack my stuff, they'd put all their stuff into 1 or 2 spots. and then I would just pick those 1 or 2 spots and give them all out defense and lurid haze, and they couldn't do anything. I mean, it's +2 save on anything that I had, whether it was I'm sorry, the pain bringers usually were like taking those attacks, but I would just do all out attack, or I'm sorry, all out defense and lurid haze. Well, they already have the +1 innately, and most things that they're fighting are only -1 rend, so they're saving on 3-ups, and that's how like everything I had in that army was just super tanky and allowed me to hold things down while my heroes just went and killed all their stuff.
Mm.
So that's the play. I mean, there's no real. I mean, once you figure out that, as far as like, oh, I know what they're going to do, because there's no like secrets, right? Like other than like the summoning, as far as bringing in more keepers of secrets, which is all I was doing. There's really no way, or like you can easily expect what is coming if you know what to look for. I never did any gotcha moments with Glutos or anything like that. The Glutos quite literally was a Maw Crusher just running up the board, smashing into whatever he could and kill it. So
funny.
He just didn't die. So I think collectively in the entire tournament, if you take out Slayer Kings, he only suffered, I think, 6 wounds the entire 4 other games that I had him. Because
wound pool.
People
like
look at
wounds.
it, yeah, people would look at it, and he'd always have Mystic Shield on himself, and they're like, man, 18 wounds with a 2-up save and a 5-up ward save, yeah, I'll pass. I'll just fight something else. And that's what they would do. They'd swing into something else, and he would just go wherever he needed to and kill everything. So Glutos, number 1. Keeper Secrets number 2, and then Sigvald number 3. That's how I would rate it. And then like, there's some other things. I think Dexessa has a little bit of play. I just haven't figured it out how to keep her alive past turn 1 because everyone wants to target the shit out of her.
Right.
So I feel like Glutos instead of running Sigvald, because I think it's only 20 points more, or 15 points more. You can swap out Sigvald and bring Dexessa in that Lurid Haze thing, and it's actually not too bad. You don't have anything to deal with the ward saves. I just think Sigvald out of the gate is much better.
Yeah.
Late game, Dexessa is going to be better.
That missile at something that you won't be able to deal with later. Right?
I mean, if I'm coming against a Gargant with, Amulet of Destiny, Sigvald is my only is my only saving grace into trying to stop it, to get rid of it, which he will. I mean, he will do, like, on average, I think, like, if he gets the charge and the double fight, he's probably doing close to 30 damage.
Yeah.
So, like 15 damage on average per attack, and then with that, you only need to do like 10 more damage essentially to kill it. So, but otherwise, it's like impossible to get rid of those. Not impossible, but it's really tough to get rid of those Mega Gargants with the Amulet of Destiny.
Yes, it is.
Also, Sigvald's fight first. I did forget to mention this. Sigvald's fight first got so many people off guard. I would tell them exactly what it does, and then I'd fight with Sigvald, and then I'd swing with something else, and they're like, "Wait, you can't do that." And I'm like, "He fought first. Like I can swing second."
Does he fight at the start of the combat phase?
If he charged. If he charged.
I'm saying the specific wording. It's fight at the start, right?
He will always fight first at the start of the charge, or at the start if he fought first in that. Or I'm sorry, if he charged in that.
Yeah, I was just comparing it to how the Demon Prince's wording is, like where
same.
Yeah, it's the exact same wording.
It's just the player turn determines priority in that. So.
Yeah, JTJ, I did paint the army. That was the one thing. If there was anything disappointment-wise, which it's a very mild I was extremely disappointed, but then it became mild disappointment after going 4-1. I didn't get picked for painting. If there was any complaint about the actual Orlando tournament, and it's a good example too what we can expect for both the New Orleans and Austin tournament. Which I guess we can talk about that, right? Like, well, so yeah, if you're wondering like how they're going to do it, because it's the same TOs that are going to be at all 3 of these. They've actually hired Games Workshop has hired these people year round to be these official TOs for U.S. Opens. So they're going to it sounds like it's going to be a long-term thing that they're going to start doing way more often. Um, they they did take painting into like a high consideration, and so that was why part of the reason why I scored as high as I did. Um, they rated you on three different. So they didn't like give you a rubric or whatever. They just gave you three different scores. The As far as like if you were just battle ready painted, they gave you 30 points. If you were exceptional painted but not like top 10, you got 50 points. And then if you were in the top 10, you got 70 points. And then they either subtracted 5 points or added 5 points if you won or if you were in the bottom two of that top 10. So that it was. I mean, that's what they said. There was no actual rubric that they showed us. The part that I wasn't super thrilled about is they didn't actually take the time to judge it outside of us playing the game. So
there you go. If for some reason y'all watch this, GWTOs, there's some constructive criticism.
Yeah, and I told them that too.
Theme that TOs don't like to have criticism.
No,
they don't like it, apparently.
But everything, as far as the actual tournament goes, I was pretty impressed with how they ran it. The thing that I wasn't too happy about was that painting. I mean, I even told them. They even said at one point, if you have a display board, to let us know and we'll give you a chance to set it up. Because I flew all the way to Florida and I brought that stupid display board, and they never saw it. I never even got it out because they came by game one, looked at it. Which, by the way, I was in the corner of like way in the back, and I only saw one judge come by, and later I found out that he wasn't even judging paint. So I don't know if anyone actually saw my stuff, but regardless, even if they did, they're looking at half an army on the board because that's what my army looks like when I'm playing. I was fighting the Tzeentch player, and all my shit's dead and off to the side. So it wasn't even. I was like, I got a bunch of summons with me. I got all this stuff painted, and it just. I was just so bummed about it because they were like, oh, we already picked the top 10. I think one person had a display board out of the 10, which is completely unorthodox, right? Like here, it's like you're lucky if there is one player who didn't have a display board and is in the top 10 painting. So I was a little bummed about that. I hope they correct that, and that they're giving out like little what's it called? Surveys. Thank you. And that was the one thing that I'm going to be kind of grading a little heavily on is like, hey, this survey is not, or this paint stuff was not very thought out. The person who won, I definitely thought deserved it. I'm not saying that I should have been in that top 10, but I don't think that it was like a fair judging because it's like mid-game and it was like, I think an hour and a half into the game. So almost all our shit was like, especially my opponent. My opponent only had Archaon on the board. He had nothing else. And it's like, how do you judge that fairly? So
paint that Archaon nice, you'll get it every time.
Well, he broke it mid-game. I forgot to mention that he Archaon snapped off the base, so he was just playing with the base. And I'm just like,
yeah, I'm sure that's a great.
Did he only have them on the base by the tail?
He had a custom base to it. It wasn't like super extravagant, like yours or like Kyle's or whatever. But like it was like only connected by two pieces, and he accidentally like was reaching over, bumped it, and it just fell right off. I mean, even Archaon flew off of Drogar. So it was like, I was like, oh god. So but yeah, that was and then so that's how you would expect the paint to go. They were pretty good at actually judging the time for each thing, so like it looks really weird on the scoreboard, or like that when they send you the rules for everything. They're like, oh, you got 5 minutes to do this and 15 minutes to do your first turn or whatever. It's not like that at all. They just let you know like, hey, you should be on turn 2 by now. If you're not, maybe you need to start thinking about catching up and stuff. And I felt like that was actually more helpful than not. I was never behind, but I saw a couple people. They were like on bottom of turn 2, and they had been doing that game for 2 hours already. I was like, hey, you guys need to speed this up. Somebody is slow playing. So, but everyone was super great there. The rules team or the TOs were like really like on point as far as like if I had any questions, they would either know the answer and like based off what they knew, or they would contact the rules team in London, and they would supposedly they had some kind of deal set up where they they had at least one person available to answer those questions. So it was really good, and I felt like also there just wasn't a whole lot of AOS presence in total. They had no models there for sale. The goodie bag had no AOS stuff. The teasers and stuff they showed, because we got a first look at the. Hopefully, I'm not breaking any, thing here or whatever. But that like Warhammer Plus stuff, we got to see it early. They gave us a early showing, but it was all 40K. And I'm like, I know, I understand what it is, but like as a pure AOS player, like it just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't mean anything to me. I felt like we were like really just here at least in Texas, like there's a huge AOS scene and stuff. But I was like, man, I don't know how some of these players in like Florida, for example, are so dedicated to playing AOS, but like never get to play. They may play once a year, maybe. Like some of them were like, oh, I haven't played since 2019. But I'm an active AOS player. Well, and it showed, right? I mean, it was like these were good players. It was so obvious that they didn't have any practice games. They were like, oh, I've never fought this army. I'm like, well, what armies have you fought? Oh, well, just the armies that I set up for and play against myself, and my wife helps me. Like that was like 5 or 6 different times I heard that.
Good way to practice.
Yeah,
I guess like
all the time. I don't know how.
No one's correcting your mistakes though, right? Like,
yeah.
So, but I made a lot of good friends and stuff.
It's good.
One of the TOs became pretty good buddies because I had a lot of time that I was just chatting with them and stuff. So, but
you can see him again here soon.
Yep.
At the end of or the beginning of October. That'll be cool.
Yeah, I actually messaged them the other day about the New Orleans tournament, and they remembered me, and we're like looking forward to doing it. And I've gotten all my fame from going to this tournament, so there's a little bit of pressure on me now. So
good for
everyone's like, man, this guy's like a Slaanesh king, and I'm like, I have only been playing this army for like 4 months.
That's funny. Slaanesh king.
Yeah, well, we'll see, but I mean, it's not. I guess it's not a high bar to set, right? You just got to win more games than any other Slaanesh player ever has won.
Just win games, dude.
Yeah, just win. Just win.
Period. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's. I think that's all I gotta say about it. Unless you guys got questions or.
There's nothing. I think we covered it pretty well. Well, you're pretty thorough. Yeah, I think this proves that like you can take anything and do well as long as you know your rules inside out, and then also have good like general game knowledge of other armies and how the game works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I can't stress enough that like it's definitely who pilots the army rather than the army itself. I've seen armies that should have won entire tournaments just get I mean, I was looking at this list. I won't say names or anything, but like. There were several Lumineth lists, 3 Lumineth lists in the bottom 10 of this tournament, and I'm like, I mean, like seriously, like,
depended on your decision making,
right?
Like, just the game itself, I think, just both sequentially and then also your just overall decision making matters more in 3.0, which I like that a lot about it, as opposed to 2.0, where at the end of it, everything felt kind of like it was on autopilot a lot of the time, just because of how the game progressed, like scoring wise, and how the armies interacted with each other. A lot of the armies were just tooled to do a lot of damage on turn 1 and 2, and the missions rewarded you for it. So you had a game that became non-interactive and simple. Yes. Whereas now it's very interactive and complex. So it's not perfect by any means, but I think it's better than 2.
I do think, like, as far as advice and kind of piggybacking off of that, like, if anyone can, like, if you ever feel like you're losing, if you still got stuff on the board, you just keep playing. I used to, in 2.0, like I quit a lot. Like whenever like I'd get double turned or something like a fighting KO, and you're just like, yeah, half my shit's gone, like we're done here, and like wrap it up. But and I hated that, like, because it's like, man, like if you don't get to play, why am I wasting my time? It's not like you have to set up a time to play, you set everything up on the board, and if I'm spending more time doing those two things than actually playing the game, why am I here? But in 3.0, like even that first game that I was, I lost all my stuff to Slayer Kings. Usually that in 2.0 that would have been a game ender. Even when Brian and I fought and he Slayer Kings Glutos on turn 2, it's like you keep playing, right? Like you have to keep playing, and he failed a battle tactic and I was ahead on the battle tactic, but he ended up just scoring enough points to get it. But regardless, like it was still a really close game going into turn 2. So
yeah, I mean, it's such a good like matchup that I was seriously second guessing my shit. Like I was like,
well, and that's the thing, right? Like you just have to make less mistakes. I keep stealing Gavin's sayings and stuff, but you just have to make less mistakes than your opponent does.
Yeah.
No, you definitely, it's decision making for sure. For sure, the decision making, because like I said, y'all know me. I'm crushing my fucking enemy, killing them driven before me, and hear the lamentations of their women. And I pick the battle tactic that is that sometimes, and I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you kill too much. Like I was saying earlier, you kill all their shit, then you're like, oh, I'm ahead, but or I'm behind, 5 points, but they have nothing left on the board, and I can't get enough points.
I haven't found that scenario. Like, I don't think you kill as much as you used to. Unless, you're in Florida and they ram their whole army into your whole army on turn 1. But I haven't found a scenario where I kill as much as I used to.
There's more value in being able to reliably kill one thing a turn than there is just being able to do like an enormous amount of damage. You really want to be able to kill one thing for sure a turn and then be tanky. Like that's what's going to be good in 3.0, and I think Slaanesh does that to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I agree too. I think they're like right in the middle. Like I would say, like for our all intents and purposes, they're like right in that middle where like the game can be 50% with a good Slaanesh player playing any other person that's playing a good army. I mean, I've geared that list more towards fighting some of this tougher stuff like Lumineth because they rely on so much overall mortal wound output. That's like, hey, I don't really have that mortal wound save, but I want you to hurt everything that I have. Those annihilators and stuff that you're seeing with a lot of stuff, they're just doing a huge pool of mortals, but like it's one for each unit, and that's what Slaanesh really lives off of. But a good player, of course, knows how to like.
It's right there in that middle, like right in that middle tier with about like
correct.
What I think Doc is. But people think Doc is better than I think it is, but I think that it's similar to Doc in that it's like high ceiling, low floor.
Yep.
And I think that the placings have kind of proved that with Slaanesh. You see a collection of 4-1 and a collection of like 2, 3, 1, and 4.
Yeah.
And you don't see a lot. You don't see a big aggregate of 3 and 2. Like it's one or the other.
I think that piggybacking off that, like when I played Trolls at for the first 3.0 at the Lone Star Open, I actually feel more confident playing Slaanesh than I do playing Gloomspite Gets right now. Because there is no swinginess. I know exactly what my army's going to do. There is no guessing as far as like, oh, am I going to be able to get this off? And the fact that they can be tanky is super. I mean, I feel like that right now is like everyone's talking about what like, oh, well, this Lumineth, they're doing like all the mortals and stuff. To me, like that means nothing because they can only do X amount of damage per turn. It's really the it's really the can I be tanky enough to stop you from playing the game. Being slow and like that. That's what scares me if they actually come out with another dwarf army. That's the traditional like stand and shoot kind of like sit back and do it. Because before those armies really suffered because they needed to move up and steal objectives. But now you just need to usually sit back on your own objectives and just lay waste to your opponent. And especially with the gap in shooting right now, if they come out with an actual full-blown shooting army right now, it's going to be insanely good. I think it's gonna be scary how good it's gonna be.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Agreed.
But yeah, I feel like there's some armies that like if we're like I really think that Slaanesh are right there. They just need cheaper battle line. I think that their prices need to be adjusted. I understand why they were so nervous about some of them. I think Sigvald and Glutos are actually pretty good point wise. I think some people are like, oh no, they need to come down more, but I think really everything else needs to come down at least 30 to 50 points.
It's like the big Achilles heel of the book because it's like I think they just have the worst battle line in the game.
Yeah.
As far as like how it's pointed and what your
just
options
the most
are,
like
it's terrible.
Yeah, it's like, oh, here's my elite unit that is my battle line, so I can have at most
they were
like
trying to prevent that feels bad scenario like it used to be, where it was a mistake-free army. You didn't care. You just rammed your army into their army, and then you got it all back. Like I think they were trying to prevent that, and they might have went a little heavy-handed with it.
Well, and that's the thing. I think they were trying to overcompensate, thinking like, oh, they're gonna summon like 15 fucking keepers. But there's a lot of games where I don't get a single keeper off, and those games are just it's like you were saying earlier, Gavin. You don't see that 3 and 2 because usually it's like if you're fighting a bunch of like here in Texas, a lot of people know how to fight Slaanesh, and so it's very possible that my 4-1 list in Orlando could go 2-3 here, just because I'm fighting a really good tier or really good matchup for players skill wise.
Right.
So
matchups are a big deal in GTs. You know, it's like you get lucky, you draw the right matchups, and you.
Well, and a lot of my stuff too was like getting double turns. There were a couple times I was like, ooh, this is gonna be tough unless I get the double turn or get the roll off, and I got it, and that was what sealed the deal for being successful. So yeah, there's other armies that don't really need that as much, but I think a lot of their magic, Slaanesh magic, a lot of people overlook how they play, but they're actually pretty effective. I mean, they're low CVs to actually get them off, and then if you hit something like and it gets through to your opponent, like it usually just shuts them down. They can't do anything. So, but
I think a big change from 3.0. From 2.0 to 3.0 is that like the tempo change, whereas everyone was used to like turn 2 roll off. Okay, who wins the roll off that wins the game. That was 2.0.
Yep.
Like turn 1 or 2 roll off, and now it's not that. So people like they get to that and they win that roll off. They think they win, and then they panic when it starts to become a scrap. And those like turns 3 and 4 is where you're gonna win the game in 3.0. I think it's usually where the game is being resolved, and I think that you're not seeing it as much as you're going to see it as the edition kind of plays out over the course of the next year. You'll see it more because right now people are so unused to the tempo of the game that they're like getting to turn 3 and they time themselves out because there's just so many new rules to know. But as people get better at playing 3.0, you'll see it more where games will be resolved in turn 3 and 4.
Yeah, well, and that was a big thing too was that a lot of the games, well, a couple of the games for me, but I think a lot of people across the tournament weren't counting or weren't predicting the objective being taken away on some of the battle plans going into battle round 3.
Yeah,
and so like there were, I think 2 out of the 5 where you'd remove a prime objective and you can no longer score the full points per turn. And so if it was like matched up like that, well, going first turn 3 was usually a detriment. Unless you were getting the double turn or something, it was like really rough. I mean, there was that one that I told you guys about. I actually made my opponent go. No, I'm sorry. Both times there was 2. I'm sorry. There was 2 where I made my opponent go first because I had set it up in a way where I was predicting turn 3 roll off. And I took away one of their objectives that they were holding, and now they're scrambling trying to get the stuff. And usually it was like Glutos and a keeper on one, and then on the very far one there was like a full unit of Painbringers, and they can't do anything with it. So that was something that I felt like it was, pretty tough for them to counter. So, but
Slayer Kings, dog.
Slayer Kings, Very good right now. Yeah. I would say like the armies that gave me the biggest worry about my matchups were Soulblight Gravelords and Sons of Behemoth are insanely good right now.
You're telling me, brother. I lost game 3 at the tournament. I was 2-0 versus Gavin, and I lost that game in about 37 seconds.
Yeah.
When I failed Dark Prophecy, okay, Gavin's going first, and
They
then
just
I
end
cast my teleport and miscast, and it was like, well, game over.
There.
On strength in numbers, Andrew walked up and was like, me and Gavin had not moved a model, and we're like, it's over. And he's looked at us like we're crazy. And I'm like, well, Giants are going to get double turn. Giants are going to walk onto all of my objectives. Giants don't care about numbers. They burn every objective on the table. He's up 15-0 at the bottom of turn 2.
Yeah.
And I legitimately can't
do anything.
I could get, we did it. I could get, if I killed a monster every round with a monster and got my battle tactic, I would get to 16 points. Literally, all he had to do was stand in my territory and call that his battle tactic that following turn.
Savage Spearhead and
just stand there.
And that was something that I don't know. Maybe people can disagree with me, but I think for the first time ever, you can play. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't think there has been an army. You can play Sons of Behemoth in 3.0. Be a complete pacifist, meaning like if you could somehow not fight in every combat phase where you're only moving your Gargants, you're not actually like doing shooting or anything like that. You're only maybe doing like spell casting for Mystic Shield. I think there's an actual way you can play a complete pacifist run with Mega Gargants and never actually have to fight and still win.
I mean, you could, because you can't ever get your objective taken away from you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you just sit there until they actually kill your Megas. But if they can't kill your Megas, you can be like, oh, I'm going to be a complete pacifist, and my Megas are not going to fight at all. And I'm still going to win.
What are we talking about? Broken Giants are?
I was talking about, like, how... kind of. Like, I was talking about, like, the armies that gave me, like, when I saw them at the tournament, I'm like, these are the ones that I gotta look out for. And I feel like Giants are like that, where it's just like they're just. I brought Glutos and Sigvald for those reasons, but I don't know if I realistically get rid of them quick enough.
Now. They're gonna be even better now.
Yeah, it's like, oh, let's see, we already got like a
tankiness.
upper A tier army. Let's go ahead and just give them more shit. Like, right? I mean,
I'm telling you right now, TOs, if there's any TOs out there listening, you might not be live, but if you're watching this later, strength in numbers does not belong in a GT pack ever. Just doesn't.
I think it's fine. What are you talking about?
I think
perfectly balanced mission.
So, I feel like Lumineth is still pretty good. I feel like Helon has become more of what people are gearing towards, but I think that's just because they don't know how to run techless effectively. That's just me.
Yep.
I think the 30 Sentinel techless spam.
They're both equally good. Like the Wind Spirit spam is it's a very interesting problem to solve because most armies don't have the tools to deal with it.
Yeah.
So they get screened out and they can't do damage to the army.
Yeah. You have to kill them with shooting, but the problem is you can't kill them with shooting because there's so little of it in the game, and they have 30 Sentinels probably blocking them. So, and then I feel like maybe you guys can correct me, but like I am not worried about Tzeentch. I mean, Archaon Tzeentch is something to be worried about, but
because we already saw it in 2020 when the book came out.
I think that they nerfed all the stuff that I care about. They like pointed all the
very strong, but like that win rate is completely overblown. That is just a reaction to not knowing how to play against Archaon, because there's no way that list should be winning at a 70% clip. That's just
absolutely not.
You're charging Archaon with things and dying in your own turn, and you're letting Archaon slay your kings or heroes.
Yep.
Like that's all that list has, because there's no board control from the rest of the army. So I mean, there's some quirks with Destiny dice and agendas and Kairos. There's quirks that you have to be aware of when you play against it, but I think it's a fine army. It's not the terror that it is being perceived as right now, in my opinion.
Well, and the thing is too is like you're running that list, and all you can bring with you is pinks. And everyone right now, even the GT in Orlando, they're not allowing you to do the rally shit that
Yeah.
everyone's been talking about.
I don't even think that you would play it. That's not even the way you play it. I think you just take all
Screamers.
screamers and host Arcanum, and
Yeah,
you
like
play you play the rest of the board with the screamers, and then
Give them the Ren and shit.
you play like bully ball with Archeon, like, and that's how you play.
Yeah.
That just personally, I think is the strongest list. I think pinks are a little bit
They're a bit of a
overvalued.
trap, in my opinion. I think people
Yeah,
rely
it's
on them
just
too
slow.
much, and
I
it's like
mean,
they don't
if
do
you
any
take
damage.
one
you
big
can't
unit, like
teleport them
one big
anymore.
unit, we can. If you take one big unit of 30 with Soul Scream Bridge and Fate Master, then you have like a viable
Okay.
playstyle. But it's a huge points investment. Like,
Well, I mean,
so
you can't like innately teleport them anymore. Like,
no, not
right?
like you used to.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
used to be able to just slam 30 of them into your opponent, and they can't retreat, and they can't do anything, and they just sit there while you sit in the back and
The
wiggle
JT
your
just
fingers
brought
and
up
do things.
flamers. I agree. Like, I would never ever in my entire life pay that points cost for a 6 wound platform. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just not interested.
Especially
Like,
since the Ren just does not matter anymore. Like,
yeah, like it's a
-2
fine
Ren is
unit,
like,
but
yeah.
like you're paying so much for 6 wounds worth of flamers. Like, I just don't think it's
Yeah.
a good strategy.
Seraphon, I don't know how to feel about them. I still think they're
They're
good.
still good, real good.
I feel like it's kind of like Zinch, right? And kind of like Lumineth,
Ask
where
the ringer at
most of the
Atomic how good they
people
are.
don't know
I
how
think
to
you're gonna,
pilot it correctly.
yeah. You say that about almost any army in the game now. I really like that. I
Yeah.
like that you're being rewarded for
Your
you're being
skill.
rewarded more for game knowledge. Like, but I think that Thunder Lizard with double Bastillodon as a core, and then Engine of the Gods is all super awesome at this game. And you Slan, you control magic. You have all the Bastillodon fire base shooting. Bastillodons are better than they've ever. That they're as good as they've been ever in their existence now, I think. And then the Engine of the Gods is great value, and Thunder Lizard too. Like, I think that's
Same for the Skink Chief
strong
on
core.
Stegodon. I think
Also good.
What's his face did a video on them today.
Who?
Hastings.
Caleb.
Caleb?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He's got a video about. He got like 3 videos about everything in that book.
Yeah.
Excellent.
He's gone through that book like numerous times, but yeah, he did a video on Skink Chief on Stegodon and like how you can do like 47 damage in one turn.
Yeah, for all
Yeah,
your
I went and watched
Seraphon
one of his
needs.
videos the other day, and he said it too. I've been screaming it too. That Scarvet on Carnosaur is a good play. It's a cheap monster.
Yeah.
Good, I like it.
Surprisingly, there were a lot of Legion of the First Prince armies that I saw there. I don't think anyone did super well. I saw, well, except for I saw Carl. He ran. He came in 12th place with his. If I remember correctly, he was the one that actually had. Let me see if I can pull up his list. Oh, no, I can't. I'll have to look it up later. But I think, sorry if I'm wrong, I believe he was the one that had Sinessa, the Slaanesh wizard, in there. I'm not sure if that was him or not, because he was the one or there was one that I kept seeing with that. Well, all of them had Bellicor, of course, and then one of them had Sinessa in there.
Well, Bellicor's so good into the field right now because of so many people.
Well, that's and that
points across the monsters, monster heroes that he makes it still.
Yeah, and I'm always listening to Gavin, so I can rip off his stuff. But one of the things that like he mentioned that like it's like perfect, and it makes so much sense is like everyone always picks the ferocious advance, right, or whatever that stupid pick 3 models and move. And so you just pick the 3, and then you just Bellicor the 1 that you want to Bellicor, and then they can't complete that objective or that battle tactic, and they're instantly at a loss from the very first turn. Which I feel like is like So stupid.
Matt Robish just asked if you only brought Mega Gargants just to send a message to the powers that be at Hammerfest.
Yeah, everyone for Austin should just bring only we should have
No.
128 Mega
This is
Gargantuans.
why I brought Gargants. So there was this chatter around Gargants about how they were so hard to play and required all of this excessive abstract thought to play well. So I wanted to I purposefully didn't look at the book until the night before, wrote an activation sheet and just played the army just to show that it's not hard to play. Because I think that is the biggest strength of Giants is how high the floor is, how easily it gets you to playing the army optimally, and I don't think that it requires of course a little bit more game knowledge is going to make you play it better, right? But there is not like this big brain army.
There's 4 war scrolls and 3.5 paragraphs of rules.
Right. There's like 7 pages of rules. Yeah. And I actually didn't see the missions until the day of, so.
No.
But it was just an added benefit, right?
Yeah, I don't understand if there's anyone out there.
I won't name people, but there's people that thought they had that angle
hard to play
on the army. Yeah, that's super hard to play.
I mean, we were just talking about it. I swear that it's an army that I could bring to a local tournament, play completely passive, no attacking whatsoever, and I bet I can still win. I think they're so easy.
And I think that to go further into the army, I think that if there was more missions with objectives that forced you to be aware of your own deployment zone, like if there's more missions with objectives that were on the back edge of your deployment zone, that would give some play against Giants, because then you would make people split their army, whereas now they just move the army in a pack into the middle of the board, and they're like, deal with this. And there's a lot of armies that just can't, and that's why they're strong.
Yeah, you're not going to get into a mosh pit in the middle of the board with Giants and come out. I mean, sometimes, like in that one mission, like that game was over in 37 seconds before we ever moved a model. Like it was almost over. I mean, we were talking it out, and it's like, I don't really know what to do here, because I either get aggressive and go in and try to kill you, or I play defensive and try to turtle up, and then you just walk in and kill me, or get within range of my objectives and burn them all. Like, it's over. Like, if you roll a double turn, which I gave to you with the failing of the Dark Prophecy for the first time all day, and it was like, I mean, what do you do here? You just lose. And Andrew didn't believe us, and we told him, like, hey, this game's already over.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Yeah.
But now you're going to have to deal with Giants with a full save reroll and an amulet. That's going to be the new play. It's going to be a
raggedy. I don't understand how Giants are the first thing that gets their own war scroll battalions. God dang.
I wonder if
GW is just so out of tune with their own game. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like they are not in tune with their own game and their own competitive play.
Well, we saw what happened was with the rule teams guys, right? So I think the problem is they have their different. They're so focused on their release schedule, which keeps getting all screwed up with COVID or whatever. And then they have, this is a White Dwarf book or magazine, right? So they probably have one person or 2 people working on doing all that stuff at once, and they probably had that scheduled for 2.0 way back when, or this time 6 months from now.
No, I don't think White Dwarf communicates with
that's what I'm saying.
Rules writers for the AOS game system at all. I think there's a White Dwarf guy that he was a Slaanesh player, and as soon as the Slaanesh rules got taken away, he wrote the Celeste Coast, and then he became a Mega Gargant player. And then the minute GW took away any ability for them to use the battalions, he's like, well, fuck it, I'm going to create my own battalions. And here it goes.
With Gargants, I really don't think it is an army issue. I think it's more of how the army fits into the packet. Because the packet favors Gargants much more than any army in the game.
I think
it just does, and I think that's what's creating all the issues around Gargants.
I think
if the packet was balanced better and had more missions that force Gargants to play in a non-linear way, it would just be like a normal middle of the road army, but the packet favors them very heavily.
And I think especially as we each if this is going to become a common theme with all armies, where they all get their own battalion or two and then their own two battle tactics, that's going to help them greatly. And
No, they
especially,
don't. They're not going like I think that's a great idea, but White Dwarf has consistently not been consistent with GW.
yeah, that's
So
true.
just because White Dwarf did that doesn't mean that anybody else is going to get it.
Well,
Like
and the thing is too is like if we eventually move away from Realm of Gur and go to another realm, the monster stuff is going to get weaker too. A little bit, not a whole lot, but like that.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think
like
that's
to
going
see
to
how much they change the packet every time, because the packet is affecting 3.0 as much as like the core rule changes is. So if they do that kind of change with every GHP, it's going to make the game evolve like very quickly at a very frequent rate. So I think you'll really see players separate. You'll see a big gap if that's their like if a new edition happens at every GHB like that, like if there's a new realm with a new packet that changes the game that much, you're going to see people really separate from year to year because there's not going to be very much consistency in the game.
yeah,
So
yeah.
no, I'm not being too salty. I'm just saying it is what it is. Like
Yeah, and
Kevin,
I'm curious.
it's just White Dwarf is consistently like an anarchist. That's what they are. They're an anarchy to the rules that GW writes.
Well,
They
and
just
that's
consistently throw random shit into the
well,
packet.
and that's the
Like,
thing. I love everything that they do put into the book or into the game. Like I don't think there's
yeah,
a
because
white dwarf.
it's all for destruction, and you love destruction.
Well, no, that's not true. I really liked the Slaanesh stuff, and I mean, although it was kind of weak, I really liked the Fire Slayer stuff too. I felt like they were all pretty neat, but yeah, most of it was for destruction, and I felt like it was super nice. And then almost within 6 months, every single time, is sometimes shorter than that. Games Workshop rules writers would like clamp down on it, right? Like they nerf Celeste, they would remove all of them, and then 2 months later be like, maybe you can play it, but the wording's incorrect on all of it.
it's an easy fix because what the problem with it is it creates the haves and the have-nots. So the way you fix it is you do a white dwarf of here is white dwarf army updates for Age of Sigmar as a whole, and you give something to every army in that white dwarf, and that would solve all the problems that are happening right now.
But wasn't 3.0 supposed to stop the haves and the
Well,
have-nots?
and that's what they
And they
specifically said,
immediately
right?
just created another
It
have.
just reset their ability to sell you models with rules, Brian. You know that.
Well, and it's like
Mhm.
I agree with Brian on that part,
So
where
I
it's like
bought Star Wars Legion.
if you're gonna do it on anything, why showcase this on White Dwarf? Like that is like the weakest way to be like, hey, we got some new battalions for Mega Gargants or Sons of Behemoth.
It'd be really cool.
It's just
if they had-
annoying. It's just annoying.
It
It's
would
like,
be super cool if they had an app that they could do it on.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like
it's just annoying as shit. It's like we don't even get the FAQs on time, but that White Dwarf comes out every day, the same day of every month, with some raggedy ass rule set added in there.
it's just
But we
so
can't even get an FAQ. We can't,
it's so embarrassing, right? Like, cause we don't even have the updated points. We don't have the updated war scrolls. Nothing in there is correct. And we had a U.S. Open tournament, and they're making us write all this stuff down on paper and giving us little cheat sheets and stuff because their stuff isn't updated yet. I'm having to Google FAQs for other people's armies because they can't show it for me. Like, I mean, what a but they made sure everything was ready for 40K players. That's for sure. Just
It'll get there. It's
I think
something
it
that's just
will.
gonna. It has to evolve over time. There's always growing pains, I think.
I've never been a fan of White Dwarf. I've just never been a fan of a monthly comic book for GW changing my game in a way where, like, this is a huge change. Like, you guys, if you haven't paid attention, like, this is a big deal.
well,
Gargants are
it's
about
like
to
a
get
DLC,
old-fashioned.
right? I mean, it's like a DLC for your army, and
It's better than what 40K's got. So they don't have any issues about how they get their rules, but their game sucks. Whereas our game is actually fun, but we have these rules issues outside of the game. So What I found is all of these problems that we have that are like game-breaking problems, it's always solved by just playing the game. Because they don't come up when you're on the board. Not really.
Kevin, to kind of
a full save reroll on 35 wounds will come up, dog.
Let's play around it.
I'm gonna talk about what Kevin said in the chat, because Kevin's saying that they should have made the battle tactic for everyone from the White Dwarf. I disagree, and the reason why I am more in agreement with Brian is because the whole point was so that no matter what army you were playing, you knew all the battle tactics. If you had been playing enough, you're like, oh, I know what this battle tactic is. I know what these command abilities are. So you're only having to focus on the faction-specific stuff. If they just keep adding more and more shit, where it's like, oh, there's 40 fucking battle tactics in the entire list, no one's going to remember any of that stuff. Like, I mean, it's just going to be ridiculous, and it's going to make the game even slower. In my opinion,
subscription to White Dwarf and carry.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
to the GP.
Luckily, the app should have all that, but yeah, it's all about money at that point. I mean, you're throwing that to the side. You're making the game harder for players, especially right now. I feel like 3.0 is actually pretty. I think if once they smooth out the edges, it's going to be really easy for people to join. At least a lot easier than it was for 2.0. That's how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a little easier for people to be like, oh, I can get the hang of the rules.
Because as competitive players, we're a very small part of the population. I think it's probably like a 20 to 80% split. Like most people play their game systems like casually with their buddies. I'd say it's harder for those players to get into the game. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I haven't played the game in that way in so long that I'm pretty disconnected from people.
I at least think it'll be easier for, like, if you're watching the YouTube videos that they're going to come out with as far as, like, how to play, I think it'll be easier for those people who are starting out from, like, I've never played a board game in my life to learn how to play that in that method. Because there's only so many things they have to, outside of their army and what their army does, they only have to learn the generic battle tactics and stuff, and they don't even have to play with those to begin with. And I think it's very simplistic as far as like.
Is we have a great community. You know, it's like it's not the first time I've walked up to a table, read the mission, and saw my opponent's army and been like, I got like a 3% chance to win this game. It's not the first time that's happened. Like, but we laughed about it. We had a good time. Like, we laughed a lot. Like, it was just like, well, shit, here we go. You know, I mean, that happened to me at a GP too, and it was like, what do? You know, at least we have a good community of guys, and we just laugh it off, and we don't take it too seriously. But I could see some person getting angry if they walked up to a Gargant table and had power in numbers. I could see like a really competitive person like having not a good time with it, because all you got to do is walk forward. Like,
well, and part of what I guess, I mean, we're going way off topic, but I feel like it's a little irritating with GW, especially like how I saw it in Orlando. If that's how they treat AOS in general, no wonder why this game isn't. It's amazing to see how different. Like, I could never, if I want to play Age of Sigmar, I can't leave Texas. It's just it's like stupid to even imagine. If every state is more like Florida than it is Texas, like that is a joke. I mean, the fact that everyone has grown it up themselves, and it's not like 40K where like the entire basis is like the entire store and all the promotions and stuff are based around that concept for that game. For AOS, it's like it's all community based. It's the fans who have built it.
Well, that says a lot about our community, right? Like the players in our community and the leaders in our community. I don't want to say leaders, but more like herding cats. You know, the people who herd all of us into a big group.
And it shows though, because like we're winning across the country. Texas is being recognized across the country. I mean, Gavin,
across the world.
You guys all placed really well at the last tournament, and even this stupid Slaanesh thing.
Archaons that are running rampant across Europe right now. Zinch Archaon, Reapers of Vengeance Archaon not too long ago. Yeah, we did that shit in 2019. in 2020.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like
I wish there was an easier bridge between European circuit and American circuit because like I think we could beat their ass like quite easily. I think we show them how it's actually done. Yeah, I'm calling them out. Come over here.
Yeah.
I'll give you a good time.
It'll get there. It's just growth. Growth just takes time, I think.
overall, I like the game. I like
If you,
it
you
a
look
lot.
at where Sigmar was 5 years ago, I think we've made it's like leaps and bounds
Yeah.
better in every way. Like, and I'd love to see what Age of Sigmar becomes in 5 more years.
Right.
If we can keep up that kind of growth towards like healthy competition, I think that we're going to have something really special in 5 years.
Well,
Both in terms of participation and visibility, and just what the game can be in 5 years. It's going to take time.
yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and I want to be to the point where Games Workshop can't just be like, oh, the Age of Sigmar group is a narrative-based painting,
Well, I don't think
fire
they ignore it. I
models.
think that they have a finite amount of resources to allocate, and 40K demands a certain amount of their resources right now. And as Sigmar grows, it'll start to peel some of that away. I think that's where they're at with it.
Like, I think we're getting to better model range already,
Yeah.
and that
Well, the
that's a good
sculpts
thing.
are amazing. It's just,
Yeah.
I think the part. I mean, this is definitely off topic, but I think like a lot of the problem that I have with a lot of this stuff is like you compare two of the armies, and in any faction, any allegiance, and you're like, good God, it's like 10 years apart on some of this shit or more, right? Like you compare like Skaven models to Lumineth or whatever, and you're just like, this is fucking crazy. But most of the time, what they're doing is they're not focusing on those armies. They're just coming out with a new army, and so they're not really balancing
that's
it.
kind of that sucks for a lot of the guys that play older
Well,
armies.
the people that are the most dedicated, or at least have stuck around the longest, they're just getting tossed to the
like
side.
Skaven players,
Yeah.
like Skaven players, to see what 3 brand new armies released in like the last year and a half, and they haven't got a new model.
Well, I think
that
Thankwill's their
they'll-
newest one, right?
Yeah, I think they'll be. And Stormfiends are new. They're pretty new. But
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that with the new book, the Skaven will get new stuff. Like it's on the horizon. I think. It's just they're going to support they're going to progress their business model in a lucrative way, and new armies. And they're really not new armies, right? Like Lumineth was high elves. Like they're high elves. So if you're like looking at like what are brand new concepts? I mean, like Cruel Boys maybe. What else really sticks out? I mean, they're really still trying to add in some of that old world flavor into the game.
Yeah, I guess Gargants were still a thing, and
Well,
I guess
all of them are
OBR is-
fantasy armies at one point or another. There's very few. I think like Deepkin, like
Because I think at a whole they really are
Otters.
trying to cater to the community. They're trying to open up
Yeah.
all of the things that people loved about fantasy battles, but put the Age of Sigmar spin on it. Still, like I still don't think that they've maxed out the potential for new armies yet.
Well, I'm not
And
saying that they
once you do
shouldn't.
that,
I
then
just
you can polish what you have, but like
Yeah.
there's still room for growth, right?
I think it's just it's unfortunate a little bit because it's like some of the like Beasts of Chaos, right? Like you really have to love that army to still be playing it. Like
It just needs a new coat of paint. It needs to be a destruction army with new models.
Right,
That's
yeah.
my opinion on Beasts of
Yeah.
Chaos.
Well, and they, like we're seeing a lot of stuff. My biggest thing is I wish they were a little more transparent in what their plans are. I understand like there's no way they're gonna please anyone by saying what they're gonna do. Like I don't like roadmaps. I feel like roadmaps are always just setups for disappointment because they never hit it on time.
Yes,
But
I mean, a speculative roadmap,
but-
like
but
an ETA.
even if
not
it
bad.
was like, hey, this is what we're thinking about working on, or like, because I think a lot of it too is like we get invested in these armies or whatever, and they're 6 months ahead, right, as far as like what they're planning on doing, and so then, Forge World, for example, it's like, what the hell are they doing with that? It's funny to look at it and be like, your army got squatted or whatever. But at the same time, like a lot of people that they buy an army, and if they buy something and they bought a Forge World model, and then that thing just gets kicked off right away, or when like for example when Ryan started playing, he started playing those high elf models, and then they got rid of most of them. And
Bro, you ain't got to tell either one of us because we bought a little book called Broken Realms Marathi and an army to go with it, and watched it consistently get nerfed every month on the 30th day
yeah.
for the next 5 months.
Well, but I mean that's
So-
the thing too. Is like it's just like, well, I mean at least I'm more talking about like stuff actually being taken out of the game, and then you just are like wondering. Like I don't even know if my stuff.
My
like
army is taken out of the game, bro.
I got-
can't play that army no more.
I got like 4,000 points of Chaos Dwarves sitting in that case behind me. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
still playable. And I went there and they're like, well, we're not sure. I mean, I'm still waiting to hear back from New Orleans whether or not I can run these things as legal or not. And they're like, well, we're waiting for the FAQ. Why am I waiting 3 fucking months for an FAQ to come out for 3.0? I thought this was like the rule proof. Yeah, it's like we have a clip. I don't have it with me. I wish I could play it right now. Where they're talking about how airtight this thing is. There will be no question whatsoever. This is the best edition we've ever. Really, really, that's what I want to hear. Is like, I mean, they have to make an FAQ to fix the FAQ they came out with before, and I still think they're gonna miss like 50% of the questions we have. So. No, I don't think anyone's being negative about this stuff. It's just, I think we all love this game and care about this game so much that it pains me personally when it looks like they don't care as much. Like when they're just like, shut up, just you'll buy whatever we come out with, just be a good boy
And
and
the
wait.
problem is for us is that we shut up and buy whatever they put out.
We do exactly what we bitch about. Yeah, it's like.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, unless we're all willing to boycott something, which we're not.
Yeah. Well,
because I mean, look at those Dominion boxes; they went like crazy, and the Cruel Boys look great. The Cruel Boys look great. They're a new army. I think that'll be awesome. I'm not downgrading whatever somebody said that they're basically
Lord of the Rings. I mean,
I disagree. I think they have their own flavor. I think they're similar, but I think they have their own flair, their own flavor. Like,
well, I mean, they're a little more goofy, right? Like the Lord of the Rings doesn't have a lot of the colors that you would see from the fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, anyway, so I think we've gone on long enough. Is there anything you guys want to say before closing?
No, Matt's right though. He's a more agile development cycle for the FAQ. Exactly. Like, if you're gonna give it, like, if you're gonna consistently give us an FAQ at this particular time,
yeah,
give us an FAQ. Like,
I'm talking
I
to.
get it. Their hands are full. They're trying to
change the rules to a digital format. Just go to complete digital format, and then you can update it quickly, like Matt's talking about, and then sell your books, art and lore. That'd be the perfect solution. It's not going to be because that's not.
Well,
it doesn't line up with their business model. But think about how much better the game could be if every month they took community feedback and then data metrics and then did a competitive FAQ update points wise and rules wise to their format.
I mean,
think about how much better the game would be.
So right. I've been saying this for a while. I'm probably like the 4th video I mentioned it, but I think like so if you look at how D&D does it, or at least like I guess the Wizards of the Coast, who like write the rule books and stuff, they have a rules team, not a large one, but they have a rules team that on Twitter you can tweet them and say, how does this work? And they'll either point you to, if it's already been asked before, that question, or if it hasn't, they have a team of the rules writers that, they only have to answer 10 fucking tweets a day each and then just, cap it out and stuff like that. And then just say, oh, well, this is how it's meant to be written. And then that tweet is used in, I mean, of course you can, D&D is a little bit different because you can always just say, oh, well, I'm the DM, I'm going to rule it this way. But as far as like tournament-wise, that I think that could easily solve this thing instead of waiting for bi-yearly FAQs. We could just have it where
what we've been seeing with TOs lately is they're doing their own FAQs. like that Facehammer tournament or whatever it is, that looked pretty cool. It's like, okay, well, we think Gotrek should not be able to heal,
Well,
so
but
Gotrek gets none of that.
it's going to be
And the Wind Spirits, you get to move them in your shooting phase in that tournament.
the problem is it's if you get regional, it's going to be like I have no fucking idea what everything's doing. Like, oh, I got to look up what rules and what play style I need to change because this region is going to have different rule set than how it is in Texas or how it is in Florida or how Games Workshop rules it. And I feel like there's just it's so easy. I mean, I maybe my system's not the best one, but I feel like if they just had it where it's like, oh, I can go on Twitter and look up how they rule this scenario, like how does this like Sigvald interact with Praetors, instead of me asking it and I have to tell everyone going forward, and every other Slaanesh player doesn't know the answer to that, it could just be a tweet up there that they can just search it up and find it. So there's never any issue in the future because they can just look it up. It saves them time, so they're not having to be asked that question a million times.
My old ass to get on Twitter, and that ain't gonna happen.
Well, I mean, you can go on Reddit and they have those things. I mean, you can find. I mean, you just type in the question to Google, and it'll usually find the tweet for you.
Well, it's whatever. I mean, there's some changes that need to be made, but overall, I think 3.0 is it's fun.
I do think it's a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 3.0 is good. I mean, a lot more thought process to your decision making in the game. We got to figure out how to score it here. I don't know how everybody's going to score these things, but I do like the way they did that. Like your battle points are your points for the win.
Yeah.
And you can create some real separation.
If demand gets high enough, you'll see them respond to it. I think what it is that we're such a small segment of their, like, really their customer base. So it just, we're loud, but like there's other people spending money too. So it's just hard for them to cater to the top. You know, it's hard for them to cater to 10% of their customer base. Is really what happens in every game that has like a really competitive top end, like whether it's computer games or board games or any kind of thing that has competition involved that also has a huge like casual player base attached to it. Also, it's hard to cater to the top 10% and have the top 10% drive your game development when the other 90% don't care.
Right.
Same way those 10% care.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is happening to on that end, is that they have a customer base, and then they have a small part of their customer base that is like perpetually unhappy with what they're getting, but continue to buy their stuff. It's a very complex problem, I think. But the game's fun. I think. Don't you think the game is fun?
You can go 4-1 with fucking Slaanesh, man.
Yeah.
How can that not be fun?
Of course, it could be better, but it could be a lot worse. I remember when like Games Workshop games were like unplayable and the company almost died. I remember that. So.
Oh yeah, it could be worse. I mean, I had some great games.
Well, and they are working on it. I mean, we got Old World coming back. I mean, clearly they recognize the need for fantasy, or the market for fantasy.
Just to appease you PC players, you fucking nerds. Just to give y'all something else you'll buy.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta think like on that flip side, a lot of their licensing has brought players back in. I mean, one of those.
They see a market that will sell, and they're diving into it.
Like, although supposedly they're cracking down on a lot of that too. They're not giving it to literally anyone who asks. Which I don't understand. Like, it was working just fine for them up until now, but I guess they want to become more of a professional brand. So, but we'll see how that goes in the future, right? So
we'll see.
But all right, I guess we'll wrap it up for now. So
yeah, thanks for everybody that stayed with us for this long.
Yeah, for the 2.5 hours.
It's always cool to have like the nice back and forth at the end of the video after we get done pumping up Evan's ego. We get like the real video after. So, but congratulations on your 4-1, sir.
Thank you. It's thanks to the community.
No matter how you try to devalue it and the various ways
I know.
you try it, it still is a 4-1 with an army that people don't think is good. So
I need another army to be shit with.
Very impressive. Yeah, for sure.
Piece of chaos. Here we go.
Yeah, that's the what the Captain Ahab. That's your Moby Dick.
Yeah, whatever I can find. That's trash.
Piece of chaos, dude. That's the next endeavor. But thanks, and as old JTJ would say, y'all be good. All right, yep. I'm gonna take your catchphrase.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Later.
Hold it.
Yes.
All right.